Good morning, everyone. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Afolabi Daniel. I work for John and Bradstreet. It's a pleasure for us to welcome you all to our webinar series for the month of March. And, for this webinar, we are considering the future of procurement, balancing cost, compliance, and risk in vendor management. And so, I would be moderating the session, and with me as the speaker is Mr. Austin Odumo. Hello. With me is Mr. Austin Odumo, the head of supply chain at Dangote Cement PLC. And you can be rest assured that you're at the right place at this time. And so I will just quickly go through the housekeeping items. So this webinar is being recorded and all lines are being muted by the organizer, but you're free to, submit your queries concern using the chat box window and also the Q&A section. And so at the same time, probably you have an intervention you might want to make. On the live session, so you can as well make use of the hand raise icon feature on Zoom while we are going to unmute you for you to speak. Um, Also, at the end of the webinar, we're going to be sharing a recording with every participant, and you can also be free to reach out to marketing@dnbsame.com in case you would like to email us or have opportunity for you to contact the speaker after the webinar. On my screen now, it's the agenda with which we are running with. So after my welcome address and of course a brief introduction on Dun& and Bradstreet, who we are and what we've been doing globally and of course in Nigeria, we'll be handing over to our speaker for today, after which we are going to run us through our platform on how it can help with part of what the speaker is going to be speaking on. And we're also going to be allotting some few minutes for us to ask our questions, then the closing remarks. So thank you once again for your time, everyone. Like I mentioned, we have our speaker being Mr. Austin Odumo. He is the head of supply chain Dangote Cement PLC. He is a seasoned supply chain expert with over 20 years experience. He has been driving operational excellence across Nigeria and Austria. He has a proven track record of building high performing teams, optimizing processes, and leading sustainable cost saving initiative. As the head of supply chain and Dangote Cement PLC, he spearheads strategic initiatives and enhance efficiency, customer satisfaction, and route to market safety. As a results-driven leader, he is committed to shaping the future of supply chain management through innovation and excellence. So speaking about myself here, Afolabi Daniel, I'm the Senior Business Development Executive with Dun& Bradstreet, and I've been in the company for about 8 years with a wealth of experience in helping companies, attain sustainable growth across different industries, and currently championing the growth of Nigerian business environment. Um, on my screen now is just a brief introduction on Wooden and Bradstreet is, what we represent and what we have been doing and globally. For almost 2 centuries, we have helped businesses with growing relationships through data. We were established in the year 1841 as the mercantile agency, and currently we rank number one on Fortune 500 list of most admired companies in financial data services category. So we have well over 580 business records, and we are represented in over 98 countries of the world and in 95 languages. So we pride ourselves to have four past American presidents, at some certain points in their career work for Dun& Bradstreet, and that we have Abraham Lincoln, Ulysses Grant, Grover Cleveland, and William McKinsey. So, why do clients around the world, work with Dun& Bradstreet? They work with Dun& Bradstreet when they need to improve their business performance, And like I mentioned, we have over 580 business records, comprehensive business data and insights which companies use in order to, attest to the credibility, the authenticity of any company they want to do business with. Globally, companies needs to, conduct due diligence, do credibility checks before they go ahead with deciding on who they want to do business or enter into any form of partnership with, in a bid to, mitigate risk and any sort of fraudulent activities that a third party company might want to perpetrate. And our data is being updated yearly to the tune of 2 billion business data records. And we also, through our DUNS number, which is a unique identifier, we are able to, unravel the linkages between companies, and also the hierarchy, how companies are being related with each other. In Nigeria, we also, in partnership with 7 major banks in Nigeria, we also came together, to form the CRC Credit Bureau in conjunction with, 7 tier 1 banks. And this platform, this framework is being used by financial industry in order to check the credit, records of businesses. And we also, in Nigeria, we have worked with the Central Bank of Nigeria in implementing risk management and rating models for banks. We conducted a rating exercise on behalf of Smedan Bank of Industry and Nexim Bank. In about over a decade ago, we also helped to revamp the NIPEX portal, which is a pre-qualification platform that is being used by NNPC and some other IOCs, some big oil and gas companies. So Dun& Bradstreet, till date, manages the NIPEX portal. And currently, we have also developed a centralized vendor management portal, which, like many of us would currently know, as VENDR, which is a short form of vendor registration. And this has been used by, different procurement managers, supply chain experts, buyers, in order to identify, suppliers that they might need at every point in time for their business operations. And in readiness to the full implementation of AFTA, we are also working on building the Africa's largest MSME database. So without wasting much of our time, so we just go into why we are all gathered here today. We can be rest assured that Mr. Austin is going to be sharing some strategic insights, experiences he has garnered over the years on how to improve performance. And then through that, we would also be learning from him on how we as procurement managers, how we can help balance cost, compliance, and risk in vendor management. So I would also like us to not see today's webinar as something that is only going to be beneficial to procurement managers, but even as business owners, as suppliers. So what are the key um, factors that procurement persons and buyers, what are the key factors that they look out for in suppliers? And maybe through that, some of us who are business owners, who are suppliers to some of these companies, or we are aspiring to be suppliers for all these companies. So what are the things we need to do for us to be rest assured that, we can always be getting POs from our customers? So it's also going to be of advantage to buyers as well. So let us would advise that we wait till the end of it, as there are more to come from this webinar. Thank you so very much for your time once again. And at this point, I'll be handing over to Mr. Austin. Thank you once again. So, Mr. Austin, are you there, please?
Can you confirm you can see my screen? I took over the screen a while ago. Confirm you can see my screen, please.
Yes, it is visible.
I can see from here.
Excellent. I'll just show myself briefly. on the video, show myself briefly, but I'll take it off because of network, right? Because anything could happen. We'll know how it is with network in recent days in Lagos. So you can see me, right? Then it would be nice to respond, or Chijoke, whoever, so we'll flow,
Okay,
right?
yes, you are up. I can see you.
Excellent. Excellent. So I just needed to show myself before I take it off, so we don't have challenge with network. So good morning to everyone. Daniel already done justice with the introduction. I will not focus on my introduction again. So it's an icebreaker. I have got three answers to my icebreaker question, but I would like that participant also throw in their answers. If you have to describe vendor risk management as a movie, what will it be to you and why? I'm going to pause for a while to get a response from the participant. Would love to have this in as engaging as possible. So it's not just going to be only me speaking to you. So from time to time, I'll be asking questions, and it will be nice for us to respond, just so we're all on the same page. So in your own word, what will you describe vendor risk management as? If you were to describe vendor risk management as a movie, what would that be and why? I'm going to pause for 2 minutes to see if we get a response. Daniel, please go through the chat box to see if we're getting response.
Okay, all right.
And tell us what it is, what the responses are.
Okay, so from Isaiah Udo, we have action.
So speaking to what I have on the board, yes, action is one of it. Comedy is another from my own end, and of course, it's a trailer. Yeah, trailer. You know what it is. Relationship has to. There's always that unexpected tweaks that we have with the risks of managing the risks that has to do with the management of vendors, right? Comedy, because dealing with vendors, sometimes you cannot. It's like a never ending sitcom that you need to continue to focus on, and you stay glued to it all the time. So for me, this is what it is for the icebreaker. For the participant, I believe you have different answers to my question. So I'm going to move now. Question I'd like to ask is, what is vendor risk management, VRM? If you are in the industry, supply chain, and especially the procurement element of it, and you've been managing vendor, is actually a process of identifying identification, assessment, and the mitigation plan that you have to have in place. Because there are so many things, risks that come with engagement of third-party vendors and suppliers. Why do you need this to be in place? Why do you need to identify? Why do you need to assess? Why do you need to put a mitigation plan in place? Because of the reputation of your company, the governance qualities, and of course, compliance posture. So it's critical that indeed you identify what the vendor risk management, and you continue to manage the risks that comes with the relationship that you have with the vendor. So it's about the life cycle. Life cycle, for as long as the vendor is in relationship with you, you need to continue to evaluate what the risks are with doing business with them, onboarding all the way to the inherent risks that you have in the course of the business, remediation plan that you have, and the continuous risks you need to continue to monitor performance. SLA is a service level agreement, and offboarding, which is ventilation, all the way to the point of ventilation. I mean, a termination of a contract eventually with vendors. So this is what VRN is about. So everything we're going to be talking about is reputation, compliance, how do you manage vendors and they don't have consequential effect on your reputations and the compliance posture that you have before the public. And of course, especially when you are a company that is quoted in the Nigeria Stock Exchange, or even the New York, or even the London Stock Exchange, a lot has to come with how you manage your vendor. Vendor must not be an impediment when it comes to your reputations and even quality of goods that you deliver to the public. So I'll be speaking to how do you ensure compliance and of course, managing the vendor risks when it comes to the relationship. We have key steps that you must consider. The first step that you consider in the process, the entire chain, is the vendor selection and due diligence. At that point that you are selecting your vendor, it's important that you do diligence. The two must go together. That is the very first step that you have to take. You need to identify the critical vendors, those priority vendors that supply you the material, the significant materials that you use, either the material or goods or whatever the services that they deliver to you. You need to do proper risk assessment. You need to do proper due diligence to be sure that they are not by any means becoming a risk to your business. So the second element of it under the vendor selection and due diligence is risk. You need to establish the risk criteria. What are the parameters? Talking about the financial stability, talk about the data privacy and the compliance history of such a vendor. You also continue to have it at the back of your mind that you conduct a thorough assessment, perform comprehensive background check. Background check is critical. I was discussing with a set of persons, vendors the other day. I'd like to know those that are behind the vendor. You know, some persons who pose as the vendor, as the managers or whatever it is, owners of a company, but there are other persons that are behind it. So we don't have issue of governance, we don't have issues of compliance issues, and also issues that relate to somebody who is in the business and also having something to do with the vendor. So we don't have any crisis in that space. So we need to know who is behind every company that you are trying to deal with. So if you're a supply chain person, a procurement person, where you want to register a vendor, you need to do proper background check, including the policies, procedures. For those in food and beverage, you know how it is. There are certain certifications that must be in place for you to deal with them, because the raw material that they supply you eventually will have impact on your finished product that will be out there in public. So certainly certifications are the food safety certified, environmental concerns and all of that. It must not be an illegal entity or a company that have something to do that is not even complying with tax law of the country and all of that. That is the first step. The second step is contract management. You need to clearly define the compliance obligations, where the company obligations and the vendor obligations, suppliers obligation has to be well defined. Service level agreement is SLA. I believe all of us know about this. The metrics that you need to measure in the cost of running with that particular vendor. What are the metrics that you want to consider? What are the KPIs that you want to focus on? What are the penalties that will come to fines for failure to meet the agreed service level? All of those things have to be determined. There's also the data protection clause that you have to consider under contract agreement. Drafting your contract, data protection is critical. So the vendor don't become a source of exposure for you when it comes to your data. They cannot leak your data private. Something that should be private to the business is being private to the business is being exposed or linked to the general public. That you have to define. That clause has to be well defined in your contract. Then the continuous monitoring and assessment is a regular risk assessment that has to be done. Contract, periodic review of your contract, vendor that are compliant, make sure the risk profile is in order, performance tracking, relating it to what you have stated in your contract, SLA, all the metrics that you have put in place in the SLA, you need to continuously measure them to be sure that they are working, they are indeed complying with them, or that you are comfortable with the performance of your vendor. For several reasons, right? If there are issues with performance, of course, it's going to affect you as a business. You also need to, incident reporting is also a critical element where there's an issue with your vendor, is important to have it reported promptly. It cannot be delayed because it could have consequential effect for you as a company. So the element of open communication that has to be in place, communication and collaboration. Communication has to be transparent, it has to be effective, you have to maintain open dialogue. There can be nothing hidden in the course of the relationship that you have with your vendor. There's also joint improvement initiative. This one is critical because as a supply chain person, you are always working towards improving your cost profile, right? Your cost outlay. It has to be reduction, optimization continuously. So I give you an example of those in food and beverage, for instance. If you have a bottle that you want to reduce the thickness or whatever it is that you want to work on, when it comes to the shape of your bottle or the shape of your material out there, it's important that you also work with your vendor because you cannot do it alone. The first point of call is always the inbound part of the supply chain, which is the raw material that is coming in. So the initiative has to be joint one and not you alone. Then mitigating risk. Vendor remediation, talk about the corrective action plan that you need to have in place continuously when it comes to the risks that are associated with, that comes with management of vendor. Termination clauses has to be well defined in the contract, well defined in the contract. You cannot just terminate because there are legal consequences if you just terminate without defining what it should be, how to terminate, and when to terminate, and who are supposed to be the parties involved in the termination process. So those are the key steps that you must take in a vendor in ensuring compliance and of course vendor management, risk management. Key consideration, I talked about the key steps, but the key consideration is industry regulations. You are operating not alone, you're not operating in isolation. There's an industry that governs what you do as a business. So continuously you need to focus on the consideration will be the regulations that you have in the industry, technology that are coming in continuously, the technology that you want to deploy. You need to leverage the vendor risk management software that you have across. The organizers of this they are very good at that because I personally came across them recently because clearly I wanted to have a focused team on for background check, for due diligence of all my vendors, because we don't want to have issues with vendors, people who are staff and are working as vendors outside the business, supplying, they are staff of the business and also vendors of the business. That becomes a governance issue eventually, and there will be conflict of interest. So in my opinion, what I always advocate for is to assess a focus team that focus on doing background check, doing the risks and evaluations, risks, managing vendor risks, relationship that has to do with this in the risks that are associated with vendor that I am dealing with continuously. It's important to assess that part so that you have someone that is indeed with the know-how. That is the word. Somebody with the know-how to managing and doing a proper background check to also give you the red flag. When there's a red flag, the company is able to send it across to you, so you adjust your business, just so you don't have challenge with the industry, the regulators, and of course the quality of your product and even the financial capability of your vendors. We have 6 effective vendor compliance strategy. I'm going to elaborate on all of this thing that you see: implementing vendor compliance policy, managing vendor non-compliance, conducting vendor risk assessment, implementing vendor portal. I think Daniel talked about that portal that they have. This is a critical element in the entire process. Then checklist for vendor termination. I did talk to us about vendor termination earlier. How do you terminate the vendor? How do you do ventilation? So you don't have legal consequential effect when it comes to negative consequential effect when you terminate a vendor. All of that I'm going to speak to very quickly, but I'll move over now. I have a first call, Daniel.
Okay, yeah, thank you so very much, sir. So for the poll, I will just hand over to Benjamin to take charge of that. But before he does that, I think we have Daniel Ezebo who has raised his hand. Currently, we will just
Yes.
have to possibly unmute him
Yes, please.
so that we can hear from him.
It would be nice to hear from Daniel, please.
Okay. So Benjamin, so can we have Daniel Ego unmuted?
Somebody unmute Daniel Ego.
Yes, can you hear me? Good morning.
Ego, yeah. Yes.
Okay, good morning.
Yeah, please, I'm very sorry. It's actually a mistake. I didn't even know I clicked on it.
Okay, that's okay, but it's
I
fine.
looked
At
at
least we can.
my phone. I'm like, this is my name. Oh. Sorry about
But
that.
that's fine. At least we can put a voice to that name. So thank you for joining
Yeah.
us again. Yes. So Benjamin, please can you just undo the poll? Okay. Yeah. So we have the poll. So what is the most critical factor in selecting a vendor? So we as business owners, as procurement, experts on this call. So if you are to, go through a selection of a vendor, so what are the, critical factors that you would consider? So we can just pick from all these options. I think we have about 30 seconds for this.
Are we getting the response? More than 30 seconds, right, Daniel?
Okay. All right. So we just go ahead. So you can continue, sir.
Okay, thank you. Security and compliance, the history, cost effectiveness, service level agreement, and reputation and industry standing. If you had the answers, of course, clearly that's you're on point. So I'm going to now speak I'm going to speak to what I talked about, the vendor compliance strategy, right? Dwell a little bit into it. Implementing vendor compliance policy. We're talking about creating a clear and a comprehensive vendor compliance policy is an essential part of the entire process, right? Because why do you need to have a detailed documentation? Detailed documentation gives you what the compliance requirements are, and it also share the understanding. You have a share understanding and reduce ambiguity. You want to take out all ambiguities. Policy has to be in place, so people are not just operating the way they feel like. Sometimes people use their native intelligence to do things, right? It has to be so as a business, you must have a clear vendor compliance policy in place, so people don't just deploy their traditional understanding to relate with vendor, and of course vendor relating with the company. There must be a regular communication that keeps everything in check, right? Continuous checking to be sure that everything is in order. You need to put technology advances that would deliver, that would communicate the policies, and the policies are made very known. An economic environment, all of those things have to be clearly defined in the policy that you have. Technology advances, economic and environment, stakeholder expectations, strategic shifts that you have in the course of running a business as you are changing is a continuous process, right? Today will be a different story compared to what happened tomorrow. So all those elements have to be fully defined in the compliance policy for the business with respect to vendor management. Then you create a vendor compliance program. You cannot but have a program that set clear expectations, that conduct how you conduct your regular audit, and then provide continuous support to vendors. All of this program has to be in place. You also need to establish an effective vendor compliance program. Company cannot but enhance vendor accountability. There must be accountability. You need to streamline communication, and you need to proactively address potential issues or risks that could arise. So the escalation matrix has to be well defined. This is exactly what you must do when it comes to creating vendor compliance program. Then there's also the third element of which is conducting vendor risk assessment. There's a financial stability element. Your vendor has to be financially stable. In fact, just recently we're doing some recruitment of vendors, enlistment of vendors rather, and one element that we requested for was how viable are they financially. You cannot come to the business, you want to be a vendor, and the first supply that you supply to the business, you are insisting if you don't get paid, you are not able to do the next supply. That means you're not financially viable. You shouldn't even be relied upon as a vendor. So financially, you need to be strong. You cannot deal with unstable vendor in terms of finance. So financial statement, so you are asking for their financial statement, you're talking about the credit report and how stable they are financially. That you see from the financial statement. In some instances, you even ask to know, even beyond the financial statement, what is behind, because some persons can even pump money into their bank account just for the sake of registration of their company with you and all of that. So you need to know it's over time. It's not just financial statement for 1 month. Over time, you see the inflow and outflow of cash from that account. It's a critical element that you need to consider when it comes to conducting vendor risk assessment. Compliance and regulatory risk, right? They cannot but be compliant, right? You are doing the business in a company, in a country. There's so many regulations, right? You're dealing with vendors who could be a major failure part of your supply chain. So you must ensure that the business activities of your vendors are in compliance with the regulations that you have, industry standard, and of course, any other exposure. You are not exposed to third-party vendor, especially reputational damage that they could have that will have consequential effect on you as a business. So quality and performance, you cannot but focus on quality, high quality goods and services. Has to be consistent. It's not one-off. It's not do it today, tomorrow you are failing. Then you also need to monitor do this to monitor the performance of the vendor, that there's consistency in what they do. It's not you perform today, the next day there are delays coming through, the delays coming through, they're not satisfied, they're not able to satisfy customer, and so on and so forth. So quality is a critical element of risk assessment, performance, part of quality, compliance and regulatory risk, and of course, financial stability are what you must consider when you do vendor risk assessment. Then the fourth element is implementing a vendor portal. Daniel, I believe you spoke to this earlier. Reason why I am an advocate of outsourcing, I talked about the focus team, outsourcing your vendor risk valuation and risk management to a third party, because of a truth, your procurement staff or whatever focus team that you have internally might not be able to effectively and efficiently manage the risks that comes with vendor. I tell you, a company with over 6,000 vendors, for instance, it will be difficult for you to just leave the vendor risk management element to the procurement staff. Because procurement staff, they have got their job to do. They have got their POs to raise, they've got their follow up with vendors. We got to do different sourcing, innovations, and all of that. They must bring to reduce costs, to manage vendor, and all of that. Efficiency element of their job. Then again, you say they should manage vendor, the risks that are associated with vendor. If you do that, you will overwhelm them, and what will be happening is just the kill the boss exercise. You tick the boss, everything is okay, until such a time that the vendor will go down and you have a negative, huge and significant negative impact on you as a business. So I prefer that there's a portal, and this portal should be managed jointly with an outsourced company like the guys that organize our team, the organizers of this particular webinar. I like that if you are a procurement company, if you are a procurement person or a supply chain person, that indeed you have a chat with them to see how. I went through their portal and I was actually very impressed with what they have, and I have no regret whatsoever giving that services, outsourcing that services to them. Just so the issue of people compromising and all of that, and overwhelm and do just ticking the box exercise will be out. So with implementation of vendor portal, you are able to centralize your documentation, automate audit and reporting, and of course, there's also element of performance metrics coming from the SLA that I talked about earlier. You're able to monitor how they perform and it becomes so visible, right? Automated alert and notifications. If anything goes wrong, the red flag is able to come through as quickly as possible. Integration with other systems. You are able to integrate the entire stuff together with what you have internally, and you're not exposed to the risks that will likely come with one or two vendors, right? So this is exactly what it takes to have a proper vendor portal. Some companies have the portal internally, but management of the portal, I'm not sure is so good. I recall just last week or 2 weeks ago, my audit department requested for a vendor from one of our plants, and the guys have to go through, it's a manual process. It's very traditional. What we have today is very traditional. And they have to go through hell of search, all right, incurring cost. You have to employ contract staff to ransack what they have, all the containers and all of that. And it's because we don't have there's no portal, really. There's no portal today. But of course, we're working towards having a good portal that will have proper documentations and all of that, everything that relates to a vendor. The other one is managing vendor compliance. I cannot overemphasize this. You hear a lot about compliance since the beginning of my presentation, right? And what are you focusing on? You want to contact the vendor to discuss the non-compliance when there are non-compliance. You want to be able to have a proper, you need to provide evidence of the issues that they have. You need to put a corrective action plan in place, document all communications and action taken to address non-compliance for future reference. All of these are what it takes to manage the vendor when you see a violation, when you see non-compliance. How do you know when the common red flag that you have when it comes to vendor non-compliance? The common red flag, and I believe in your company you see this a lot, right? Missed deadlines. Vendors are not able to deliver. You have a PO issued to a vendor. It should deliver in 30 days time. In 90 days time, the vendor is not able to deliver. And what do? And you need the material. You have to go for somebody else and all of that. Emergency purchase will have to come to play. The quality issues, they deliver with so many rejections, right? Rejection rate continue to grow from time to time. Shows that is a red flag. Then it becomes another incomplete documentation. They're not able to give you all the document. The document is missing, or that document is missing, and you're not able to process payment. Payment is delayed, or because payment is delayed, you're not able to take they are not able to take the next purchase order, and so on and so forth. So many things, regulatory violation. They are not able to adhere to relevant laws and regulations of the country or industry that they are operating in. Those are signs of non-compliance, vendors that indeed you need to do away with severe relationship with. Communication gap, poor communications, they're not responsive, and compliance where you go for, you want to find out one or two other things, they are not able to provide any document, they are not able to communicate well, and so on and so forth. These are signs, I call it red flag, right? When you have this red flag, if you have all of this, then it's a red flag. There's a need for you to take the relevant actions. And I talked about termination, which will be the next one, checklist for vendor termination. What are the checklists? Clearly, vendors are entities of their own, right? So they're legal entities if they are indeed registered and they're doing the correct thing. So if you want to terminate, you don't just terminate a vendor. There are some checklists that you have to take to be sure that indeed you are doing the right thing. So there will be no legal consequences tomorrow. Because if you terminate without following the due process, the effect of that will be that you could be sued and the business will pay heavily for not doing the right thing. So the checklist, I'm not going to go through everything, but summarize one below, talking about the contract review the contract terms related to termination. Because recall, I talked about in your contract management, you need to put the termination clause. We talked about the SLA, talked about the information data protections and all of that you must have in the contract. So you review the termination clause that you have. You have to send a formal notification to the vendor that you have the intention of terminating or severing the relationship you have with them. There must be a transition plan. So if they are critical vendors for you, you not just terminate, because it has to go through a particular process. You want to onboard and of course onboard new vendor. The phasing in, phase out procedure becomes so critical. That is the transition period. So you don't have a disruption in your supply chain. Documentation is also critical. Reasons for termination have to be well documented for tomorrow. Anything could happen tomorrow. So if there is any reason to understand why particular vendor contract was terminated, if you have a proper documentation, it becomes so easy. You just flash it and everybody will see what it is. The legal consideration, critical that you look at that, address any legal financial implications or terminate that relates to termination of a contract. You need to look at this. A few points are critical where you want to terminate vendor. You don't just wake up. Some of us have contract terms. You say you can terminate any vendor or supplier's contract without at any point in time. Yes, you can, but you also need to follow certain rules. so you don't have a legal consequence that will be negative tomorrow. So I'll go to the next poll. Tanya, and I believe we are following so far.
Okay, yeah, so we have the second poll, as we can see on our screen. So what factors would most likely lead a vendor termination? What factors would most likely lead to a vendor termination? So is it continuous failure to meet SLAs, breach of security or data protection policies, regulatory non-compliance, or financial instability? So we have another 20 seconds at this time for us to react to this poll.
So what factor would most likely lead to a vendor termination? Single choice, right? I hope people are responding.
Yes, there's. Can you please go to the slide also so that people on LinkedIn can also participate by dropping their responses in the caption?
Say again.
Can you please go to the slide where the poll
You
is
mean
so
on
that
the slide for the poll slide?
yeah. So for those on LinkedIn, they can also
Yes.
participate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so
So
from
this is
Nurudin,
the second poll. What factor would most likely lead to a vendor termination? Continuous failure to meet SLAs, breach of security or data protection policy, regulatory non-compliance, and financial instability. How long is this for?
20 seconds. So in another 7 seconds, I think we can just can move forward for constraint of time.
And I believe we are getting response, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I see. Somebody say oh, somebody's A, C.
So we've had Nuruddin, pick continuous failure to meet with SLA. Okay, so for David Owolabi, we are going to be sending links to to the video to every participant and also the slides to this presentation. You're going to receive that via email. So and for every other persons who have been asking this question. Thank you.
So I believe we can move.
Yes, we can. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. So why is vendor risk management important? I believe you all agree with me that there is no business today that will not have one thing or the other to do with vendors. So there's a dependency on vendors, right? So risk management will help you to identify and mitigate potential risk that comes with this dependency that you have with the vendors. So it's important to have a proper risk management program, policies, and strategy in place because unfortunately you cannot do everything yourself. So in supply chain, you have the inbound transformation, which is the processing, and then the outbound warehousing, and of course, sending your product to or services to the final customer or consumer. So you have the vendors are playing and across the different stream, even the inbound, even the outbound parts. The vendors are you have outsourced contract. I mean, a transport company that all that are into delivery of your product. You also have vendors supplying you raw materials and the inbound part and all of that. So no company today will say they have everything from beginning to the end. So there's a dependency on vendor. So if you are dependent on vendor, then risk management becomes so important. You cannot but have a proper risk management, vendor risk management program in place, just so their failure will not rub off on you. Talked about reputation, talked about your compliance culture, and of course, we talked about quality of goals that you are delivering to the public. Why is it important? It's also important because of data security and privacy. is also very much, this I cannot overemphasize. So you don't have your data exposed to the entire world. Regulatory compliance, because as a company, since you are dealing with them, they need to be compliance a company and not one that continue to breach the law and they are dealing with you. If you breach law continuously or standard that the company or country have set, then certainly they will have effect on you as a business that is dealing with them. I wouldn't want to have such a relationship. So business continuity and resilience is also the other one reason why is important. So you don't have a failure today that will become failure coming from vendor that will be disruptive to you, or your supply chain will be impacted and you're not able to deliver goods and services that you have promised your customer. Reputation and brand protection, we cannot continue to talk about reputations. It's actually the mother of them all. At the end of the day, your brand has to be protected. You must not be known for a company that is dealing with an illegal vendor or supplier who is into illegal affairs and all of that. So they must be environmental friendly. They are not into unethical practices that will eventually rub off on you as a business. Cost optimization, supply chain, procurement person that is in supply chain or supply chain in general. Cost optimization is one key element. We talk about it every day, every year. It's also always part of our budget process. How you optimizing procurement, how you optimizing sourcing, and of course, warehouse optimization, manufacturing, how you optimizing your manufacturing process all the way to delivery. So it's important that we have vendor risk management program always in place. And if you don't have the know-how, outsource it for those that got what it takes to manage vendor. So what are the types of third-party vendor risks that we have? We've talked about all of this, cyber risk, talked about data protection risks associated with technology. Technology is good, but there are so many things that can also come from the internet and all of that could affect your vendors and remotely affect you as a company. Compliance risks need to be compliant, financial risks, environmental, social, and governance risks, and reputational risks. But more or less emphasizing, and I continue to emphasize, so this you cannot talk about enough when it comes to vendor the risks, compliance risks. We talk about financial risks, talk about environmental, social, and governance, and reputational risks. I'm not going to dwell on this again because I've spoken to this enough already today. So the very last slide that I have is the 8 best practices when it comes to for you to be successful vendor risk management program. How do you know if your vendor risk management program is successful? You have the best practices, suggested best practices, right? It's not everything, right? But these are the suggested best practices that we have here. You are starting with onboarding. You need to score and manage. You need to automate the key aspect of your vendor risk management process. Make smarter decisions with continuous vendor risk intelligence. You need to continue to do this. Fix what is important with remediations and reporting. You take a continuous intelligence, automation approach, and so on and so forth. And of course, accounting for geopolitics. You cannot, because you operate within a particular political, zone or country or continent or whatever it is. You must account for the geopolitics of that particular area. Then build in a compliance reporting from the ground to up. There must be compliance reporting from ground to up. If you don't have what it takes, then indeed you outsource for better management. And then, of course, ventilation of vendors. When you want to ventilate, you want to sever relationship with vendors, you have to do it in a very smooth and efficient and verifiable way. These are the best practices that I would suggest to any supply chain practitioner, expert, or a procurement person that is on this call today. So I dare to say thank you for listening. Dalu, Godia, Esho, Anya, and so many ways to say thank you. Thank you for having me today, Daniel, Benjamin, and all the team. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you once again, sir.
Thanks for
Yes, so I must, say that it has been an insightful session, and we appreciate you for your time and sharing, from your expertise and wealth of experience in the supply chain management landscape. So at this time, so I wouldn't know, maybe we have anybody who would want to ask questions at this point. Yeah, so if we don't have any, okay, so I could, from the chat box, I could, read from our participants, also appreciating you, as well, and affirming to the fact that it has been an informative session, which we all appreciate, and we do not take this for granted. Um, so at this point, I just want to quickly, share my screen for us to understand how we can leverage on Dun and Bradstreet platform, our vendor platform, as either as procurement managers or even as suppliers, in order to, advance our business.
I think somebody say his sorry, Daniel. Somebody say his hands are up. David
Oh,
Olabi.
okay. So maybe we just quickly allow him speak. So Benjamin, please, can you help
Yeah,
unmute him?
thank you very much. Mr. Austin, that's a very wonderful presentation. I appreciate. And thank you, DMB, for this for organizing this event. I mean, you are enhancing our professionalism. So the question I'd like to ask is with respect to contract termination, we have an agreement with one company, and the fourth job, no, we don't want to job for them, successfully we meet SLA, we meet deadline. But there's a particular one that they ask us to do, though we know they are internal politics anyway, is a oil and gas industry. So we've given our professional advice, recommendation, but they want us all to go the other way around, the way their own way. So they seems not comfortable. So they even brought in their own experts, their own in-house technical team to come and assess, and verify our recommendation, which they found to be right. But since then, they didn't allow us to do the job. They didn't they just keep mute. It's over a year. Just keep mute. So we don't know whether they have terminated the contract or not. So what is your advice on this? What should we do as a company?
I want to understand, are you a vendor to a company or a supplier to
Yes.
that particular company?
Yes, we are a vendor. We
instance, you are a
register.
vendor.
Yeah, we register with them on their vendor portal. So we are vendor to them.
So the question is, what are the terms that you have, terms of the relationship that you have with the
Okay, I
company?
think yes. I think
Are
one
they
of the actual
violating it?
you said
Is there a
no,
violation? I mean,
no,
yeah.
there's no violation. We have not even executed the task. Not talk of, not talk of analyzing our compliance level in terms of response, in terms of financial, in terms of, so we've not even executed their task. They just give a okay.
Yeah, in arriving at a supplier or a vendor that you would like to execute something for you, a
Yeah,
particular service for you,
yeah,
there are two elements that they consider. One is the commercial, right? The commercial in
yeah,
terms of the cost at which you want to render your service to them or you want to supply
yeah,
your goods to them. Then the
yes,
other part is the technical evaluation that must be done. So there are
yes,
two elements. It's also possible that they have done these two assess evaluation and you fall short somewhere. There could be somebody else who is ahead of you. The reason why they have you does not mean you are the sole supplier or sole person that you have when it comes to that particular service or goods that you supply to them. So there could be somebody else who is delivering something better.
I agree.
In some instance, some vendors have insight from procurement, right? They try to have an insider that give them, which is wrong anyway. It's a very wrong practice that somebody in procurement department to be giving a vendor information with respect to their bid and all of that. There is always that something. So the possibility that I would say it could be that when it did their technical evaluations and the commercial evaluation, something you fall short somewhere and they prefer the second or the other vendors that they have that offer the same service or supply the same goods to them.
Yes, but if that's the case, just like you said in your presentation, we expect the feedback from them. You didn't hear anything?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. The right practice is to send the feedback. That is for companies that are indeed operating like the right company. You know, I know companies that are operating. So companies are still operating like a tradition, like the operate tradition, like a traditional company, right? They are not entirely interested in operating with the operating at their level that they should in terms of what is generally acceptable in the industry today or around the world today. So company, even interview, it's not common to this one. Even interview. So companies, you have an interview with them, they'll send you feedback. But yes, they are happy to have to engage with you, but unfortunately, you're not able to progress to the next stage and all of that. It's the same thing with procurement. So the best practice that we will say to anyone who is heading procurement or supply chain, please, what is best? The best practice is that if a supplier fail to win a particular bid and all of that is critical, is incumbent on you to communicate to them just so they're happy. This is exactly what is lacking in your case now. But I'll tell you for free that they have gotten somebody who is offering something better. But what is missing is that we'll talk about communication, effective, open dialogue. There should be. Remember, I talked about it earlier. That is what is lacking in the relationship that you have with that company of yours.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. So, what do you think we should do now? Do you need to communicate?
You have to engage. You have to engage. You need to inquire. You need to ask them what they should tell you. You want just so for improvement. You want to know. We are not saying they must give you the contract or give you whatever it is, but clearly you want to know so that it will help you to improve your own your internal processes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. This is what you should ask. It's your right to ask them.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you for the the answer. I'm sure you must have found value in that. So we just quickly need to run us. Hello.
There is a question here, right? Sorry. We're out of time, but I see somebody is asking question here, right?
Okay, so I would just maybe implore that we just allow me quickly run through this. Then after that,
Excellent.
we can
Excellent.
take
Please go
questions
ahead.
that we can. Yeah, so we just quickly like to run us through our vendor registration experience as our portal. Mr. Austin has spoken brilliantly about the fact that companies we need to leverage on solutions that are available in the market, and one of which is the Dun and Bradstreet vendor portal. For us to effectively manage our supply chain. So then at Bradstreet, we have the vendor, which is a short form vendor registration. It's an online access to that allows procurement managers to have a 360 view of their suppliers, so who they are. You also have access to verified alternative suppliers. So possibly when you need to look elsewhere for another supplier, probably in situations whereby the supplier that you are using, is defaulting or has fallen short of some factors which Mr. Austin has made mention of. We also have an opportunity for you to use this portal to clean and update your supply base. The supplier vendor as there are changes, developmental changes, and a whole lot that occurs with regards to the data and information of suppliers. So we have our vendor portal, which helps procurement managers, which helps supply chain leaders in order to have their system updated and also prevent the risk of supply chain disruption. So Dun& Bradstreet vendor portal has three different interfaces. One for the supplier where, for instance, Austin Nigeria Limited goes to register himself as, a supplier, highlighting their capabilities, what they can do within the business environment, and also the procurement manager, the supply chain experts, where you have an opportunity to, see who your suppliers are and also have access to other suppliers that you might want to contact for your business operations. We also have the Dun& Bradstreet admin side of it, where we carry out our due diligence, our pre-qualification. We verify the data, the information that has been provided by a supplier or a vendor, and as well, run checks on all their documentations. And so for Dun& Bradstreet vendor portal, it allows you, like I mentioned, gain visibility with dashboards showing procurement managers the different stages of the registration process that their vendors are. You have access to see your vendors that have been pre-qualified by Dun& Bradstreet, the ones that are still in process of registration, and like I mentioned, locate alternative suppliers. Okay, so what are the benefits to procurement managers? It allows you to assess the financial capabilities of your current um, and potential supplier. So, Mr. Austin, spent some time to highlight on the fact that procurement managers, in order for you to run an effective supply chain management, that you also need to consider the financial capabilities of your vendors, right? So Dun& Bradstreet system allows you to, with some key dashboards, know the financial standing of a vendor so that you know how to deal with such vendors, the kind of projects you can commit to such a vendor, and also count on an available network of alternative vendors in order to reduce the risk of supply chain disruptions. We find ourselves in times whereby we have companies, being sanctioned by regulatory bodies, regulatory agencies as a result of, a crime that they did not perpetrate by themselves, but possibly because they've worked with a vendor or a supplier that they didn't really, do a deep dive due diligence on. So Dun& Bradstreet system helps you to know who are the people behind the companies that you do business with, your suppliers, your customers. If they are in any kind of sanctions or watch list, and this helps you to decide whether you want to enter into any form of business relationship with such. It allows procurement have access to the compliance documentations. In Nigeria, we have some documents that a supplier needs to have, and so all of these are also made visible to you on our system, on our vendor platform. And as a procurement manager, it helps you to avoid dealing with unverified vendors. It allows you also to count on a variety of manufacturers and traders of products you need for your procurement processes. Using the Bradstreet portal, procurement managers can, by you searching through a particular product, so you can get vendors that have the capacity, the potential to supply you those products. So this is these are one of the benefits for procurement managers. And as I'm saying this, it's also good for a vendor that when a search is being conducted on all these product lines, that your company can actually pop up as one that is in that line of business. So for procurement, it also allows you to have an unbiased, third party information on vendors, so that you are not dealing with a particular vendor based on sentiment, so but on an available data that you can bank on. So that it's been always said that data don't lie, and so it's also um, proving that companies that base their decisioning on data, they outperform companies that rely on their instincts and head knowledge. It allows to streamline procurement processes with fast turnaround time and updated information on vendor. It gives you access to a product-based database, and also you have access into the company's shareholding and management personnel. So on our system, you have access to knowing those who are behind the particular company, who are the shareholders, who are the ultimate beneficial owners of such, businesses that you currently work with or that you would potentially work with in the future. So apart from the benefits that have been accrued to supply chain experts, so we also have the main benefits to suppliers, to vendors, because it allows you to increase turnover. The more you are visible as a company to different organizations, different buyers, so the more the potential for you to increase your revenue as a company, because every company tries to be stable in the market and also to grow their revenue in the market. So being found on Dun& Bradstreet system on our portal allows you to increase your revenue and also to prove that your company is credible. Um, we run checks on companies, and before we issue our 9-digit DUNS number, which is an end product of this registration. Once you have gone through this, we issue a DUNS number, which when presented um, to any potential buyer, so it gives them the confidence to want to do business with you. So in a way, enhancing your credibility, and also allows you to cross sell, because you are visible to different procurement managers from different industries. So you have the opportunity for you to increase your customer base. So what are the essential documents that we capture on the vendor portal? We have the identification data, the name of the company, the registration number, the key contact persons, and contact persons, contact number, which we revalidate, we try to update from time to time. So we have different platforms that have all this data, but can you actually bank on such information, such data? How often are they being revalidated? Are they being updated? So one thing that separates Dun& Bradstreet portal system from every other ones is that our data are being updated from time to time. You also have the opportunity to the basic financial details of companies, certifications, the document, the registration certificate of those companies, the allotment of shares, list of their directors, um, their shareholder details, and a whole lot of information that businesses or business leaders need before they can decide on whether they want to work with any company or not. We in Nigeria, we have a number of companies that are using this vendor system. We have, for instance, we have the likes of Water Smith, we have Ikeja Electric, um, we have ExxonMobil, we have Seplat Petroleum. Um, for companies that are in the ICT sector, the DUNS number is also the DUNS number certificate, which is what we would issue to you after you have gone through our pre-qualification system, being required by Apple, by Google, for companies before they can have their applications deployed on the on this platform, Apple platform, and of course the um, Google Play Store. Um, I'm just going to briefly talk about the DUNS number. It's a unique 9-digit number that we assign to companies that have registered with Dun& Bradstreet, that has gone through our due diligence and pre-qualification exercise. And this number is being referenced globally. It's being recognized globally by international organizations, the ISO, and the European Commission, blue chip companies, and a whole lot of fast-paced organizations. So by all these organizations. So unfortunately, I'm getting prompting that my screen is not moving, of which I've been moving from my end. So this might be due to um, some technical issues.
Yeah, it's up now. Do I move from my end so that you just follow through? Because it looks as if my moves as well. Okay. What do you prefer?
Okay, so maybe you can move from your end.
Okay. Let me when you can see my screen.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you, it's up.
So is that where you are?
Yeah, so you can just move it back. Yeah, so let me have it. Just keep moving. Yeah, so you can just stop here. So I mentioned about the essential data that we capture on our system. So we have the identification data, the basic financials, the certifications that have been gotten by those suppliers, by those businesses, by different companies. So and also the registration certificate. So for companies in Nigeria, you need to have the CAC registration, the allotment of shares, how the companies of the share have been distributed, and just as we can see on the slide. So can we move to the next? Okay, we have a few companies in Nigeria. This is just a few out of the ones that are partners with Dun and Bradstreet. So we have Walter Smith on their portal. Before a supplier gets to register, you need to provide your DUNS number certificate, and if your DUNS number certificate, which is what we would have issued to your company for you to work with them as a supplier. So for companies that do not have, on their portal, you have a link that you can click on that redirects you to Dun and Bradstreet vendor portal for you to initiate the registration. Can you move to the next slide? So we have Ikeja Electric. Next. Okay, so this for Apple developers. So on the Apple platform as well. So for a company to have their applications deployed on the Apple developers iOS portal. So you have to also present a certificate or an evidence that you have gone through Dun and Bradstreet pre-qualification system. We also have for Google Play Store as well. So can you move to the next, please, sir? Okay, for Samsung as well. So we could see that we have global brands outside the local companies that also, trust Dun and Bradstreet, solutions for an effective supplier management exercise. Next, sir. So DUNS number is a unique 9-digit identifier number that we issued to companies that had gone through Dun and Bradstreet pre-qualification and due diligence system. And like I mentioned, it is being referenced by global organizations, most Fortune 500 companies. It's a number that remains for a company, as long as they keep existing. And currently in our global database, we have over 580 million, those numbers assigned to different companies globally. Next slide, please. Okay, so our data tells a story. And what is that story? Is that a corporation fails every 3 minutes. So this is a survey that has been conducted by Dun and Bradstreet, which make us understand that every 3 minutes a company fails. A new business is formed in every 58 seconds. A company name change occurs every 15 minutes. A business files for bankruptcy every 8 minutes. A directorship changes. D&B database is updated every 3.9 seconds. And we have a business telephone number changes every 24 seconds. All these changes, we, as Dun and Bradstreet as a company, we through our data updates, we are able to capture all these changes that occur within a business environment, such that whenever you are having access to our system, you know that you have access to a platform that allows you also to keep tabs on all these changes, because we have instances of companies, whenever they get information about the need for them to submit proposals, quotations for businesses, even a company that has failed, that has failed to be in the business operation for many years, they would also, want to present themselves at that time. So, which might not be a good one for any company that wants to transact with such. So, with Dun and Bradstreet system, you have an opportunity for you to, um, you know, using this story to know about the track records of a business, to know if you really want to engage with them or not. So thank you so very much for your time. So there are questions that we have been unable to answer. Probably at this time, we might want to take such. Thank you so very much. You can as well email us at info_Nigeria and the same.com, or visit our office on third floor Access Building, Tunde Gafara Close of Adeni Jones Ikeja. Thank you so very much, everyone, for your time. Okay, yeah, so I think I could quickly see a question here. Thank you for the informative session. What would you advise to new graduates going into the procurement and supply chain industry? I think, Mr. Austin, you're in the best position to, answer this. This is from someone who is considering supply chain.
Yeah. Look, if you're a fresh graduate and you want to go into procurement, the truth is in procurement, you have category management, different categories in procurement, right? Your subject matter or your discipline will be very much relevant. In procurement, you have engineering, so the technical part is where you can easily fit into. So if you're an engineer, or you can fit into that category. If you're an accountant or business management or anything that is social, even marketing, and one thing that you need to also know, everyone needs to know, supply chain is the int now, is the rating. Yes, you have sales, you have supply chain. Sales will take the order, supply chain will have to deliver. And it starts from, I talked about inbound, the processing, and the outbound part. So it depends on where you want to play. If you're an engineer, manufacturing part is also a critical element. But drilling it down to your question that relates to procurement is a good place. But integrity is critical. You cannot also compromise on so many things, right? Because you are the one doing the commercial conversation with the vendors, with the suppliers, with the contractors, and all of that. So there can be no compromises in that space. There can be no conflict of interest. So if you're in procurement, conflict of interest is a critical element that you always guide against. You cannot have your brother supply and then you bid always being won by your brother or your associate and all of that. But it's a very good place a good place to start, a good place to work in the true sense of it. And procurement, part of supply chain, manufacturing, part of supply chain, warehousing, distribution, haulage, and all of that, they are part of supply chain. So it depends on where you want to be. But it's a nice place and a very wonderful place to be.
All right, thank you. Thank you. So I also have another question here. With the low technological advancements, network challenges and network challenges and vendors that find it difficult to embrace technology in Nigeria, what do we say is more important here? Getting good quality products from unregistered vendors, or sticking with the vendor management portal without considering quality and compliance?
The two, to be frank with you, it depends on where the kind of company you are. I'll give you an instance. There are some global company, right? Multinationals. Before you are even their vendor, especially those vendors supplying raw materials, they have companies like, I don't want to start calling companies' name here, right? So I'm not promoting them. We even need to go and certify that you are a compliant, your factory or your warehouse is compliant, because you are an integral part of the business, right? So compliance is critical. You cannot say you don't want to be compliant, but you have quality. How do you define quality? Quality has to be tested, right? So this is one thing, Daniel, and the person that asked the question. Quality has to be tested, and processes to test quality. So you cannot say you are a vendor, you have quality materials. Somebody must test that quality material. So whichever way, there must be a form of verification, validation of the kind of quality material that you have. And then there are some companies that will not deal with you if you don't have all the relevant processes in place, because it's part of their process. It's part of, is something they can't do without, because somebody will come, an auditor will come tomorrow to audit the entire process. They audit from vendor site all the way to the factory, then from factory to processing to distribution eventually. So they cannot but work with those that have the right process and right environment in place. If not, they will be condemned for doing that.
All right, thank you so much, sir. So, if I would also like to add to this, with regards to with the rate at which vendors are embracing technological tools. So, incidentally, that's where we find ourselves today, and whether we like it or not, so we just have to align so that we won't be missing out on opportunities that we need to leverage as business owners uh, on technology platforms. So most fast-paced companies now, they've automated their system, so no company actually keeps a file paper file system. Yeah, so I think the earlier we begin to enhance our team, our as business owners, in order for them to also equip themselves with a few of all these technology skills, then the better for us. Um, so it's time whereby we also need to upskill our team and also ensure that they can also interact with the system. Thank you for that, sir. So I just hope I'm not missing out on any further question. Okay, someone is asking if we have an office in Port Harcourt. So we do have our salespeople usually, from time to time, visit Port Harcourt. So we can, if you need to have a meeting with us, so you can schedule that meeting. We have our office in Lagos and in Abuja, Federal Capital Territory. And so for questions relating to how you can register on our platform, or how you can either as a procurement manager or as a supplier, you can email us at info_Nigeria@dnbsame.com. Thank you everyone for your time. So we would also be keeping in touch for our future webinar series, whereby we come together to learn strategies, we learn insights on how we can move our businesses forward. So thank you everyone. So I wouldn't know if we have any intervention from anyone, especially from the team of panelists. Chijoke.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you to all the participants for uh, being here with us, sharing your time with us to, share knowledge. I would also say thank you to Mr. Austin Odumo for, spending your time to impact knowledge to all of us with regards to what happens in the supply chain industry, and also how we could leverage on technology to make this process seamless. I would also want to chip in a little bit to the question that speaks of what we should focus on, whether we should proceed with unregistered vendors and, give them credits with their good quality, or we should stick to the vendor management process. Uh,
Sorry, please. You need to round up in about 30 seconds. I know
oh,
you.
okay.
You could speak on
Okay,
that.
so the simple question I want to chip in that is that we could be tempted to proceed with unregistered vendors because of their quality, but when we consider the costs of going through compliance failures and all that, it wouldn't be advisable. So I think in a short form, this is my advice to such a question. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating. Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. Benjamin, yeah, so please can you just quickly, maybe in 20 seconds, speak about the survey?
All right, guys. Thank you all once again for being a part of this very insightful webinar. Thank you to everyone who's joined us today. So after this webinar, there will be a survey, and would love for everyone to please partake in it. That's just basically everything. Thank you once again. Daniel, over to you.
Okay, and that's it. So we've come to the end of the webinar. Thank you for your time, everyone, and wish you a productive day. Bye, everyone.